stopped to change a tire, then realized she was running for her life. The back road was empty, the sky bruised with a coming storm, and a woman in a torn coat stood beside a rusted sedan with a shredded tire, her hands shaking far beyond cold. When Kale Voss pulled his bike to the shoulder and offered to help, her relief lasted only seconds, because her phone started buzzing, the screen lighting up with a name that made her face drain of color. She wasn't just stranded. She was being hunted, and the black SUV now turning onto the dirt road behind them meant the man she'd been fleeing for 2 months had finally caught up. What happened next would transform a simple roadside stop into a rescue that an entire motorcycle club would ride into battle for. Where are you watching this video from? Drop your city or town in the comments below. We want to see how far the Hidden Heroes family reaches. Subscribe to Hidden Heroes, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear a story about real-life angels on 2 wheels. The stretch of County Road 41 that ran through the southern edge of the Pinewood Hills was the kind of road that state maps barely acknowledged. It was a narrow, cracked ribbon of asphalt that wound through dense forest and abandoned logging camps, used only by the occasional delivery truck, a few lost tourists, and the riders of the Stormcrest Brotherhood Motorcycle Club. The Brotherhood had adopted this territory as their patrol route, a place where cell signals died, where accidents could go unnoticed for hours, and where people who didn't want to be found sometimes tried to disappear. Kale Voss was the president of the Stormcrest Brotherhood, and he knew every curve of this road like the lines on his own hands. He was 51 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with a shaved head, a thick iron-gray beard, and deep-set eyes the color of a stormy sea. His leather cut was a museum of his life's work. The top rocker read Stormcrest Brotherhood, the bottom rocker No One Left on the Road, and the central emblem was a great lighthouse standing firm against a crashing wave, a crossed wrench and torch beneath it. Around it clustered dozens of patches, a medic cross, a shield with a woman's silhouette, a child's handprint inside a heart, a road captain's bar, and a patch that read Stay Until Safe. He was riding alone that afternoon, having just left a meeting with a local sheriff about a missing persons case the club was assisting on. The sky was a churning mass of gray, and the wind carried the electric smell of rain. He was about to turn toward the clubhouse when he saw the sedan. It was an older model, faded blue, pulled crookedly onto the gravel shoulder with its emergency flashers blinking weakly. The front passenger tire was completely shredded, the rubber hanging in strips. And beside it, struggling with a jack that was clearly too small for the car's weight, was a woman. She was in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, wearing a thin coat that was torn at the sleeve. Even from a distance, Kale could see her hands trembling, not just from the cold, though the temperature was dropping fast, but from something deeper. She kept glancing over her shoulder at the empty road, as if expecting something terrible to appear. Kale pulled his motorcycle onto the shoulder and killed the engine. He removed his helmet, hung it on the handlebar, and walked toward her with slow, deliberate steps, his hands visible. "Ma'am, do you need some help?" The woman spun around, her eyes wide with a fear that was already primed. She took a half step back, her hand clutching the jack handle. I'm fine. I can handle it." "I'm sure you can," Kale said, his voice a low, calm rumble. "But that jack isn't going to hold this car, and the storm's about to break. My name's Kale. I'm with the Stormcrest Brotherhood, a motorcycle club. We patrol these roads. I'm not going to hurt you. I'd just like to help change that tire." The woman studied him. The patches, the weathered face, the steady eyes, and something in her posture eased just slightly. "I'm Lena," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never changed a tire." "Then it's a good thing I've changed a few thousand." Kale knelt by the flat, examining it. "You got a spare in the trunk?" Lena nodded and popped the trunk. Inside, Kale saw a small suitcase, a duffel bag, a pillow, and a box of granola bars. It was not the trunk of someone on a casual drive. It was the trunk of someone who had packed in a hurry and had been living out of her car. The spare tire was underneath it all, and he pulled it out without comment. As he worked, he noticed the other signs. The bruise on her wrist, purple and fresh, peeking out from beneath her coat sleeve. The way she flinched when a branch cracked in the wind. The phone in her pocket that buzzed and buzzed and buzzed, and the way she looked at the screen each time and then shoved it deeper into her pocket, her face going paler with each glance. "Your phone's been going off a lot," Cale said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Everything all right?" Lena's jaw tightened. "It's nothing. Just, just someone who won't leave me alone." Cale didn't press, but he knew. He had seen this before, too many times, in the women the Brotherhood had sheltered over the years. The packed car, the fresh bruise, the constant, ignored calls. This woman wasn't just broken down. She was running. He had just finished tightening the last lug nut when a new sound cut through the stillness. The low growl of an engine. A black SUV was approaching from the east, moving fast on the gravel shoulder, its headlights cutting through the gloom. Lena saw it, and the color drained from her face completely. She stumbled backward, her hand flying to her mouth. "No, no, no, no. He found me." "How did he find me?" Cale stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "Lena, who is that?" "My ex-fiancé. His name is Dorian. He's been tracking me. I left him 2 months ago. He said if I ever ran, he'd find me and kill me." The words tumbled out in a panicked rush. "I thought I had more time. I thought I'd made it. Please, please don't let him take me." Cale's expression didn't change outwardly, but something in his eyes ignited, a cold, steady flame of protective fury. He reached into his vest and pulled out his phone. "He's not taking you anywhere. You're going to get in your car, lock the doors, and stay down. I'm calling my club." Lena scrambled into the driver's seat, her entire body shaking. Cale sent a single text message to his vice president, a woman named Sable Voss. Code red. County Road 41, mile marker 14. Armed threat, woman in danger. I need everyone. Then he stepped into the middle of the road, planted his feet, and faced the approaching SUV. The black vehicle screeched to a stop 30 feet away. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. Dorian Greer was in his mid-30s, lean and angular, with a face that was handsome in a sharp, cruel way. His eyes were feverish, his mouth twisted with a rage that had been festering for 2 months. In his hand, he held a tire iron. Not for a tire, Cale knew, but for something else. "Where is she?" Dorian's voice was a snarl. "I know she's here. Her car. I saw her. That's my property. You're interfering in a private matter, old man. Step aside." Cale didn't move. "My name is Cale Voss. I'm the president of the Stormcrest Brotherhood. That woman in the car is under our protection now. You're going to get back in your vehicle, turn around, and leave. The police have been called. If you want to press your luck, you'll find out what happens when you threaten someone on our road." Dorian laughed, an ugly, humorless sound. "A biker gang? What are you going to do, old man? There's one of you and one of me, and I've got a tire iron." "I'm not alone," Cale said quietly. And then the air filled with thunder. The sound came from the west, a deep, rhythmic roar that grew louder and louder until it shook the gravel on the road. Over the rise came a wall of headlights, motorcycles, dozens of them, moving in tight formation. At their head was a woman with close-cropped silver hair and a prosthetic ear, her leather cut covered in patches that matched Cale's. She was Sable Voss, the vice president, and she was flanked by a giant mechanic named Garen, a medic named Leora, and a young prospect named Wynne who had been a runaway herself. Behind them rode 20 more riders, their engines a synchronized roar of solidarity. The bikes pulled to a stop in a semicircle around the sedan, their headlights pinning Dorian Greer like a spotlight on a stage. Riders dismounted, their leather creaking, their faces grim. Sable walked directly to Cale's side, her voice low. "Status. The ex-fiancé. He's been tracking her. She's got a fresh bruise on her wrist. He's armed with a tire iron. The police are 10 minutes out." Sable looked at Dorian, and her eyes went flat and cold. "You've made a very serious mistake," she said, loud enough for him to hear. "You've come onto our road, threatened a woman under our protection, and raised a weapon against our president. Put the tire iron down on the ground, right now, and step back with your hands up." Dorian's bravado crumbled. He looked at the sea of leather and patch-covered vests, the scarred faces, the quiet, unwavering resolve. He dropped the tire iron. It clattered to the gravel. "This isn't over," he spat. "She belongs to me." "She doesn't belong to anyone," Sable said. "Get back in your car. Stay there until the police arrive. If you move, Tarn here, who weighs about 300 pounds, will sit on you until they do." Garen, who was indeed enormous, cracked his knuckles and grinned. It was not a friendly grin. Dorian retreated into his SUV, slamming the door. He didn't leave, but he didn't move either. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 cruisers, the deputies already briefed by the club's liaison. They arrested Dorian on charges of stalking, violating a protective order, which Lena had filed in another county, but which had not been properly enforced, and assault with a deadly weapon. They found a tracking device hidden in Lena's spare tire well, which explained how he had found her. The device was logged as evidence, and Dorian was taken away in handcuffs, his face a mask of impotent rage. When the cruisers disappeared, Lena finally emerged from her car. She was still trembling, but she was standing. She looked at the ring of bikers who had materialized from nowhere to save her life, and she didn't seem to know how to speak. Sable approached her gently. "Lena, my name is Sable. I'm the vice president of this club. You're safe now. Dorian's going to jail, and we're going to make sure he stays there. But you need more than just a change tire. You've been running for 2 months. You're exhausted, hungry, and you've been hurt. Will you let us take you somewhere warm and get some food into you? No strings. Just a safe place to breathe." Lena's composure, which had held through sheer adrenaline, finally shattered. She sank to her knees on the gravel, and Sable caught her before she fell. The bikers formed a protective circle, their backs to her, their eyes on the horizon. And in the middle of that circle, Lena cried the tears of someone who had been terrified for so long she had forgotten what safety felt like. The Stormcrest Brotherhood's clubhouse was a converted lighthousekeeper's cottage perched on a bluff overlooking the sea, a fitting symbol for a club that saw itself as a beacon. Inside, it was warm and cluttered, full of mismatched furniture, a stone fireplace, and walls covered with photographs of the people they had saved over the years. Lena was given a private room with a real bed, clean sheets, and a door that locked. She slept for 14 hours. When she woke, Leora, the club's medic, examined her injuries. The bruise on her wrist was accompanied by an older, yellowing bruise on her ribs, and she was dehydrated and malnourished. Leora treated her with the gentle professionalism of someone who had been an ER nurse before she found her way to the club, and she made a referral to a trauma counselor who worked with domestic violence survivors. Sable, meanwhile, sat with Lena and listened to her story. Lena had met Dorian 2 years ago. He had been charming at first, the kind of man who opened doors and remembered anniversaries. The abuse had crept in slowly, a cutting remark, a shove, an isolated weekend where she wasn't allowed to use the phone. By the time he'd proposed, she was already trapped, her self-worth eroded, her friendships severed, her finances controlled. She'd tried to leave twice before. Both times he had found her, and the punishment had been worse. This time, she had been smarter, saving cash in a hidden account, planning a route, leaving her phone behind, and buying a prepaid one. But the tracking device in the spare tire had been her undoing. If Kale hadn't stopped, she would have been dead. Sable listened without interruption, and when Lena finished, she said simply, "You're the bravest person I've ever met. And you're never going back to him. We're going to help you start a new life." The Brotherhood's help was comprehensive. Sable worked with a lawyer to get a permanent restraining order and to ensure the stalking and assault charges stuck. Garen, who was a whiz with technology, swept Lena's car for any other tracking devices and installed a new security system. Wynn, the young prospect who had been a runaway herself, became Lena's companion, taking her to counseling sessions, showing her around the town that surrounded the clubhouse, and just sitting with her in the quiet moments when the fear crept back. And Kale, the president, remained a steady, fatherly presence. He didn't push her to talk. He just made sure she had everything she needed: food, warm clothes, a safe place. One evening, he found her sitting on the bluff, watching the waves crash against the rocks. He sat down beside her, a respectful distance away. "I used to come up here when I was lost," he said. "The sea doesn't care about your past. It just keeps going. It reminds you that you can keep going too." Lena looked at him. "Why did you stop?" "On the road that day. You didn't know me. You didn't know me anything." Kale was quiet for a moment. "Because someone stopped for me once. I was in a bad place years ago. A biker found me, gave me a meal, a place to stay, and a purpose. He told me that the road is full of people who are one breakdown away from losing everything. And he said, if you see one of them, you stop. You don't ride on. You stay until they're safe. That's the rule. That's the whole rule." Lena looked back at the sea. "I want to be that for someone else someday." "You will be," Kale said. That's the cycle. Now come inside. Wind made chilly, and she's been dying to ask you if you want to learn to ride a motorcycle. Lena laughed, a small, surprised sound that seemed to catch her off guard. Me? On a motorcycle? Everyone should ride at least once. Teaches you that you're stronger than you think. She learned. Win, who was patient and encouraging, taught her the basics on an old Honda that the club had rebuilt. The first time Lena felt the engine thrum beneath her and the wind on her face, she cried again. But this time, they were tears of liberation. She had spent 2 years being told she was weak, and here she was, on 2 wheels, holding her own. Over the following months, Lena's life transformed. She found a job at a local bookstore, a cozy place run by a friend of the Brotherhood. She moved into a small apartment above the shop, a place with a window that looked out onto the main street and a door that locked securely. The club continued to check on her regularly, and she became a fixture at their weekly dinners. She started volunteering with the Brotherhood's outreach program, helping other women who were fleeing abuse. She learned to spot the signs, the packed trunks, the trembling hands, the phones buzzing with unwanted calls, and she became the one who knelt beside them and said, "You're safe now. We're going to help." 1 year after that day on County Road 41, the Stormcrest Brotherhood held their annual Ride for the Voiceless rally, a fundraiser for domestic violence shelters. Hundreds of bikers gathered at the fairgrounds, and Lena stood on a stage with Kale, Sable, and the others. She was wearing a leather vest of her own now. She was still a prospect, but she was family. The back patch was the lighthouse emblem, and on the front was a small, custom patch, a tire crossed with a torch, and the words "I was found." She spoke into the microphone without a trace of fear. "A year ago, I was stranded on a back road with a flat tire and a broken spirit. A man I'd been running from was coming, and I was sure I was going to die. But a biker stopped. He didn't just change my tire. He stood in front of me, called his family, and told a man with a weapon that I was under his protection. That biker saved my life. This club saved my life. And now I ride with them, and I help other women who are running. Because I know what it is to be invisible, and I know that the Stormcrest Brotherhood never, ever rides on." The crowd's roar was deafening, the engines thundering in salute. Dorian Greer was in prison, serving a 10-year sentence. Lena's bruises had healed, and her phone had long stopped buzzing with his name. And somewhere out there, on a lonely road, another woman might be trembling beside a broken tire, praying for a stranger to stop. The Stormcrest Brotherhood would be there, because that was the rule. You don't ride on. You stay until they're safe. You become the lighthouse.